Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Way Wednesdays. We are doing a virtual Midrash. What's a Midrash? A Midrash is basically where we're seeking the meaning of the text. We're trying to understand what is it telling us. And the best way is to go through it. I've got Pastor Gary on the line with me, and we're going to go through this together. So tonight, Gary, we are in the passage about Korah, right?
Correct.
Yes, right. So now Korah had a few issues. He thought that he should be king, basically. um, but we'll get into it, and I think that will kind of solve things. Everybody, we're late because it's my fault, so I'm sorry. Um, oh well,
Last week is my fault, so we're all even.
we're even. All right, good. Well then,
Who knows
fantastic.
what my internet's going to do? So
You never know. You never know.
right.
Hey, why don't we just jump in? That's kind of what I was thinking, and do we have any announcements? We should remind people that we're going to Israel April 2021, right? You want to give a couple of details on that?
I would love to. As a matter of fact, we have people already signing up. So this is going to be for an 11-day tour from April 5th through the 15th of 2021. This is right after Passover. It's the most beautiful time of the year to be in Israel. The springtime in Israel is just amazing. The weather is outstanding and perfect and everything else. Not to mention the places that we're going to be. We're going to be of course, the north of Israel, up in the region of the Galilee. We're also going to be taking some trips up into the Golan Heights area, which is new to us. We're going to be coming back down towards Jerusalem, but we're going to make a stop in Judea, Samaria. And that is, again, just really where Israel first entered the land. So as we're studying through the Torah, and as we talk about as the people begin to enter the land, they're going to go right into the area of Judea, Samaria. The temple, per se, the tabernacle and wilderness was there in Shiloh for hundreds of years. It's just a really rich biblical history there before we go down and spend the remainder of our time in Jerusalem. Highlight is we're going to be observing Shabbat in Jerusalem. No experience like that on earth. If you love the Shabbat, you're going to really love the Shabbat in Jerusalem. So anyway, deadlines. Have your registration done by September 30th. All you need to do is put a small deposit for the trip and for the airfare, and by September 3rd, that'll save you at least $100, if not $200, because the rates do go up as we get closer to the year. But so it's a small deposit that you have to make. People ask, it's like, what happens if we have a resurgence of COVID? Everybody knew what happened this year, and trips were canceled. Tourism in Israel was shut down. There are guarantees with their tour guide, with the airlines, that you'll get most, if not all, of your money back. And nobody wants to take advantage of somebody for things that are out of their control. But God forbid that should happen. It's going to be absolutely a fabulous trip. Hey, I wanted to bring up one other thing, Pastor. We got folks on the line because people are asking why we are a week ahead of most other sites at the Torah portion. So the reason for that is that most of the other locations, so if you go onto, say, for example, First Fruits of Zion website or the Chabad website or just about any website in the U.S. looking for the Torah portions, it's going to have the last week's Torah portion, basically. What we like to do is we follow the traditions of Israel. So we stay in sync with Israel. We do the same thing when we observe our holidays. Oftentimes people will say, oh, are you observing Passover on this day or that day? Well, we're observing on the 15th or the 14th of Nisan, like it says in the scripture. That's the day that Israel observes. And then folks in the diaspora observe a day later. So we always try to stay in sync with what's going on in the land. And there's a long tradition of why there's an extra day in the diaspora and things like that, which are interesting but not relevant to our study. So that's why we happen to be a week ahead right now, as it appears, because we're on the Israeli schedule, not the diaspora schedule. The schedules actually do come back into sync in July. We have a double portion that comes up, and we're all back together again. So don't fret. By the way, we got out of sync because Shavuot in the diaspora was celebrated on a Shabbat. So they had a special segment for Shavuot. That's when everything went kilter. So we're going to get back on track.
Yeah, and a few times I just got the wrong passage, but otherwise we're going to sync up again really soon. So, well, I'd say without further ado, let's get into the text. I'll tell you, this is great stuff. By the way, guys, if you want to use this software, it's called the Word Bible software. You can get it for free at theword.net. I highly recommend it. I think it's wonderful. It's free. You do have to pay a little bit for some of the Bibles if you want to. There's so many that are for free. I think you should take advantage of those. But the beauty of this software is that you can download it to your computer. So let's get into this. Now, Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, sons of Reuven, took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. And they spoke, they gathered against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" Now I'm going to stop right there, Gary, because I want us to go back and take a look at some of the underlying language of the word congregation, right? So vayikalu, so here's the word, and they congregated, okay? So they congregated, keila, from the word kahal. All right. And then I want to look at the word of the assembly. So the word assembly here, sometimes the versification is off. It's synagogen, all right? So we have the word synagogue right there. Sometimes we're going to have the word church. We're going to have the word ecclesia as well. So we're going to see that they're both being used. I just wanted to throw that in there because that's just a little something to keep in mind as we go through the text. So without further ado, we will keep going. And he said, so when Moses heard it, he fell on his face. And so he spoke to Korah and to all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. That one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this, take censers, Korah, and all your company. Put fire in them, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi." Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi, is it a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve them? And that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you? And are you seeking the priesthood also? Therefore, you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord. And what is Aaron that you complain against him?" And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said to him, "We will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like a prince over us?" I'm going to stop there, Gary. This is too much good stuff. I can't stop. I can't go on. We got to talk about this stuff, right? I mean, because this is crazy. They're coming out of the land flowing with milk and honey. Wait a second. I thought they came out of Egypt. What is this guy all about?
Well, that's a really good question. And one of the things that is baffling to me is that they are Levites. They've been set apart. They have a special job. And where are they coming from in terms of understanding that they should be priests as well, and that everybody should go up? But it begs the question: is like, well, doesn't Peter tell us that we are a kingdom of priests? And doesn't it say in Exodus 19 that we are that the Israelites are a kingdom of priests? Or is this rebellion, or is this seeking their just due? Well, that's a interesting question, and I don't know that I have the answer for that.
Hmm. Well, to me, it seems like there's a really big clue when they say that, why did you take us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey, right? So these guys clearly have a warped view of history, right? They're saying, man, we had it made back in Egypt, but now here we are. You brought us into the wilderness to kill us, and you keep acting like a prince. And I think anybody who's in any kind of leadership, doesn't matter if you're in a multi-billion-dollar company or if you are in a small little organization, sometimes that country church in the middle of nowhere, right? There will be people that feel that you're doing too much, and I mean, it's interesting when you actually get into the role of leadership, you're like, oh, I get it. There's so many demands that are put on a person. And again, from the smallest of settings to those largest of settings, the larger it is, then the more people are clamoring at you, and the more weight that you feel. And it's hard to substantiate that or to express what that really looks like, because until you're actually in the situation, you don't feel it. It's kind of like the captain on a ship. The captain feels the responsibility of all the people on the ship, right? If everyone's going to hate if the ship sinks, right? But the captain is the guy who's up at night making sure, generally speaking, except for the Titanic, but otherwise, he's the guy that's up at night making sure that things are going well, that people are safe, that everybody's doing their job. He cannot do all the jobs, but he's looking out that people would be doing the jobs, and that responsibilities are being met, and that people are just anyway doing their stuff. But so there's a lot of weight, and so here Moses, is kind of minding his own business years ago. He's in the land of Midian. He's married. He's got kids. He's having a good time with the sheep, and then God calls him to go back and to take the children of Israel out of Egypt. He goes. They already start yelling at him. You made it so hard for us. We had it pretty good. Now we should go get our own straw. Thanks for nothing, right? So that's the first time that they get all mad at him. Then he takes them out. Then they come to the rock and a hard place. And, did you bring us out here to kill us? I mean, how many times did they say, did you bring us out here to kill us? So many times they said that, and they were just whining about what was happening. And so this is where I get this sense that, Moses is like, man, this is crazy. I'm sick of these people. I don't know what else to do with them. And so, Moses, I mean, he knows that he and God are tight, right? He knows that because he has been having daily conversations with him. It's surprising that Korah should not remember that Moses has had this incredibly intimate relationship with God. But what's crazy as well is that back in chapter 12, you had Miriam and Aaron who were basically saying, Moses, you take too much. So now he has the same thing again, but with a different crowd. And, they're complaining that, you took us out of the good land and now you're trying to kill us and you're acting like a prince.
Well,
yeah.
And also back in Numbers 11, not that long ago, we read where Moses was complaining. It's like, you put too much on me, Lord. It was an instance of they were disdaining the manna. They wanted meat. Again, the people are rebellious and griping and complaining, and and God says to Moses, says, "Look, I'm going to spread some of the spirit that I put in you, and I'm going to spread it to the 70." And then even Eldad and Medad were prophesying in the camp, and Joshua was like, "Well, you guys are unauthorized." And Moses said, "Yeah, if I wish everybody would." And so it really is interesting to look at this case because is it okay for everybody to prophesy, but only some people to minister in the sanctuary, in the tabernacle? And I think that is a little more to the point. The priestly job is very specific, and especially offering up the incense. Is a very specific job, and we actually see an incident. I think it's in First or Second Chronicles 26 with Uzziah, and where he goes to offer incense.
Yeah.
And Uzziah was a great guy.
He was.
Yeah,
But he got arrogant. Yeah.
He got arrogant. Exactly. So is this a sense of arrogance, or
and Nadav and Abihu, right? So Aaron's own sons were careless. They were careless. That was back in Leviticus that they blew it. They went in with the Eshzara, with the foreign or strange fire, basically earthly fire versus God's fire, and it was an explosion, right? I mean, it did not turn out well. So there was a real personal cost, right?
Yes, and it's interesting because Nadab and Abihu, they were authorized, but they didn't follow the process correctly.
The protocol, right?
Yeah. These guys, the sons of Levi, were not authorized, so it didn't matter if they followed the protocol correctly or not. They were not authorized. So when it comes down to coming before God and serving in the sanctuary, this is it's life and death. It really, seriously.
Yeah. I wonder if Moses has basically learned his lesson at this point, because remember back in Exodus, everybody was coming before him and standing there from morning to night, waiting for his judgments. And then his father-in-law he's like, "What are you doing, man? Like, this is crazy." He says, "Well, the people come to me looking for judgments, and so I listen." And he's like, "No, this isn't going to work. You've got to find a better way." So maybe we're seeing this kind of an evolution in the growth of Moses, where he is kind of a one-man show. I can do it all, right? He kind of has that sense. And then his father-in-law is like, that's not going to work. I mean, yes, you can, quote unquote, you can do it, but it's not going to work. It's not scalable, right? You can't do that for 1 million plus 2 million, whatever, 6 million, I don't know, 3 million people. You can't do that. It's not going to work. And so it could be that Korah has a legitimate sense of, hey, you could share a little bit more with us, but he does seem to take way more onto himself. And again, you get this sense that there's this underlying complaining instead of, hey, Moses, could we talk? I got a question, kind of like, hey, raise your hand. You got a question? Okay. Yes. Korah. We're Levites. Why is it that we can't do more? Right. But he comes with this accusatory tone. You're doing too much. You're lording it over us. You took us out of the land of plenty, and now you've brought us here. I mean, that's a huge slanderous slap in the face to Moses, because Moses was, basically telling the children of Israel, speaking on behalf for God, I'm going to take you to the land of flowing with milk and honey, right? And of course, he hasn't produced. Not that it's his fault. It's not his fault at all. It's because the 10 spies were stupid and, didn't listen. And so now they're going to wander for 40 years. So you get the sense that there's this situation. They're like, oh my goodness, we have to now wander 40 stinking years. Really?
Well, and I wonder if that's what the Korah was referring to. rather than saying, you brought me out of Egypt, you brought us to the brink of the promised land, you let these spies do their thing, and now we were there. We had the fruit. We saw it. It was in our hands. We had the report, and you weren't a leader enough to overcome the. And again, look at the leadership manual that is here, and leadership is a really tough thing because it's full of bumps in the road and things that misdirect you, and of course. I always say, everything would be so great if it weren't for the people.
And it could be great if it weren't for the leaders, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
but it is. And so we see Moses making missteps. We see Korah making missteps. We see Aaron making missteps, and growing and developing as leaders, not unlike ourselves. Doug and I, we're always learning. One wise man once told me, "There's always room for improvement," and I take that to heart every day.
Yeah, there is. And and that's the first step toward humility, is realizing that, what, I could improve in this area, right? When we start thinking that we've arrived is when things really get ugly. That's when,
Right.
when we're not teachable, then boy.
And we don't have it figured out. And Moses is a great example of that because he listens to his father-in-law, Jethro, right? When things become overwhelming, he goes to God. How can I bear this people? How can I do this? So we all get to our breaking point where we're fed up. We've had it up to here. And then there's a number of options that we have. I mean, we can lash out. We can throw in the towel. We can do. Moses goes to God. Says, hey, you need to help me. You put this burden on me. You need to help me through it. And I think that's one of the flaws of Korah too. Is like you said, Korah, okay, raise your hand. Let me, you got a lot going on here, Moses. Let's see how we can help you out. And then Moses could explain that. No, you don't want to get involved with this priestly thing because this is very specific. This is the way it needs to operate, and we still see this division in Israel today. We talk about it every Passover when we talk about the three matzahs, right? What do the three matzahs represent? In Messianic faith, we say, it's the triune nature of God. But in Israel, they talk about, it's the priests, the Levites, and the people. The three divisions of Israel that still exist.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah. There's a question here by Shemin. I think Shemin's a girl. I'm not quite sure. But she says, after the completion of the Mishkan, the tribes brought their gifts and offerings to the Kohanim. Moshe gave them to the Gershonites and to the Merarites, but Numbers 7:9, nothing to the Kohathites. Okay, so part 2. Could this be what ignited Korah's rebellion, especially that the Kohathites had the most dangerous job carrying the sanctuary furnishings?
I think that's an interesting thing. I haven't looked at it in that perspective. I'd have to go back and look at the text. And I know that going forward, as they enter into the land, the tithes that were brought by the people to support the Levites were distributed amongst all the clans of Levi. But I haven't looked at this specifically, but that's a really interesting thought.
Yeah, it is. I have to confess, I have not kind of dived into that either. So I'm not sure. It's a fascinating thing. Well, so what is there an application? What's that?
I said I'm going to take a note and take a look at that. It is really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of thinking, is there an application that we can kind of glean from this? I mean, it looks like some miscommunication. We've got some hurt feelings. We've got some pent up anger. Boy, it sounds like today, right? What's happening in our country right now? So what can we learn, right? When you feel like you're not being represented and you feel like the other party is lording it over you, you feel like they are not hearing you. They're misusing you, abusing you.
Yeah, I think there's some other things you can throw in there. I think, it's like we're coming with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
We really want to, our desire to help, but I think part of that is looking at timing, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe reflecting, is that really what my heart is, or is there some underlying ambition or agenda there that the other guys aren't doing it right, or I could do it better, type of thing. And
Yeah.
it's kind of working through the process. I think there's a lot of application that we can look
Yeah.
at here.
Well, I mean, they get very judged, right? The ground opens up and swallows them. So it did not end pretty for these guys. So it would seem that God essentially took Moses' side. I mean, that seems to be the verdict as far as I can tell.
Yeah,
So whatever their problem was, God was not sympathetic to it. Um, I feel like when somebody's in a position of leadership, right? Like what James said, let not many of you be teachers, for you will receive the stricter condemnation. And you get the sense that, okay, if you're a Levite, you've now been put into this special relationship, this special position.
Mhm.
Now more is expected of you, right? You get some benefits to that, but you also have more responsibilities. And if you should default on those responsibilities, there will be a penalty. And I kind of feel like in our sort of age of grace, where we feel like this grace is overwhelming, it's just oozing out of the Bible, right? I mean, that's kind of the theology some people have, and we forget about God's righteous standard. He has not changed at all. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. His modus operandi has not changed one iota. So think about Acts chapter 5, right? There's another couple that got the short end of the stick because they blew it, right? So we have, I'm blanking on their names here, Gary. Help me out.
Let me get there.
I know.
Cyrus? No.
So Ananias and Sapphira. There we go.
Sapphira, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay. It was coming. It was coming. Yeah. So they. Thank you. That was the delayed reaction there. That's funny. So, yeah, they lied, and then it was death. I mean, what? Wait a second, death for lying, for kind of boasting about this, right? But they got the same, you blew it, it's over right now, kind of thing. So that's the sense that I'm getting, is that when you're in a position of leadership, God is calling you to a higher standard, and whatever that may be. It doesn't always have to be a pastor. It could be lots of different. We're all leaders in different ways. So anyway, well, hey, let's keep going here. We've got Moses said, "Do you and all your company be present before the Lord, you and they, as well as Aaron. Let each take his censer." Let me share my screen. I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing. All right, I gotta be the camera guy too. All right, here we go. So, all right. Anyway, so every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation, and the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Then they fell on their faces and said, "Oh God, the God of all the spirits of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and you be angry with all this congregation?" So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, "Depart now from the tents of these wicked men, touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins." So they got away from around the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives and their sons and their little children. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will understand that these men have rejected the Lord." Wow. Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, and all the men with Korah, with all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. The earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. Then all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up also." And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "All right, I'm gonna stop there for a minute, because again, there's a lot that we can explore in that passage there. So, wow, man. I mean, God is pretty stern about this. God says, "Let me at him. I'll take him out." So God seems, what I'm sensing is he's incensed that they should talk smack about his guy. Moses says, "No, don't let it be that way." Right? So Moses kind of puts the brakes on God in a sense, but still, these three, God says that they're wicked men. They're wicked men. Do you see something in the text that gives us really the sense that they're wicked? I mean, I don't see anything specific, but there must be something that is kind of in the general sense of what this is about.
I don't see. Yeah, I don't see that. No. So
Right.
God clearly understands the heart, and
Right.
I think that's one of the things that we generally, if I have an application to take away from this, I think we generally harsh more sternly than God. That we think a lot more people are wicked than God does. But this is one of those instances where it's kind of reversed, where maybe we don't see it, but God knows what their hearts are, and He judges them accordingly.
Right.
Because this is stern. So, but
Yeah.
God clearly understands what the underlying motivation was, or there is a greater good that is happening here, in terms of, if they were allowed to go and offer up fire, it would somehow pollute or cause the tabernacle somehow to become I don't know.
Desecrated in some way.
Desecrated in some way, yeah.
The sense that I get is that this is really about the 10th commandment. This is about coveting. I get the sense that, kind of like Miriam, they went and were talking smack about Moses. There seems to be little appreciation for the hard work that Moses has been putting forth. And I get what the sense that I get is they're from on the outside looking in. They're like, why does he get to go hang out with God? Why does he get to be in that position of leadership? Didn't God also call us, right? Didn't God also put his stamp upon us? And so we're going to go and we're going to talk to him. We're going to straighten him out. We are going to report him, to the management. And we've got a case here. We know that God is on our side. In fact, I just talked about this last week, that we get the sense that God is on our side. When Joshua was outside the gates or the walls of Jericho, there's the angel of the Lord, the commander of the Lord's army. And he goes up to him and says, "Hey, are you with us or with our foes?" And he says, "Neither." Right? He says, "I'm the captain of the Lord's host." And I think it's such a great reminder that God is not on my side. He's not on your side. He's not on the Republican side. He's not on anybody's side. He's on his own side. He stands for righteousness. Righteousness and truth are the foundation of his throne. So he's not going to show favorites. He plays favorites with no man. He shows favoritism to nobody. He's not mocked. What a man sows, that he shall also reap. So though I think you're right. I don't think that there's a lot that's specifically in the text. I think if we just read between the lines just a little bit. So it says, so they rose up before Moses. I think that is maybe a clue here. I don't know that there's necessarily, it says vayakumu, they went up. I mean, they rose up, so there's nothing magical there in the text, but I get the sense that it's not that they came to Moses, but they rose up before Moses, right? So you've got this posse, right? You've got this kind of angry mini mob. I mean, that 250 people, if you had 250 people staring you in the face, you were like, man, this is enough to lynch somebody, right? And we know that there had been times where the people were so angry they took up stones and they were about to stone Moses and Aaron. So we don't see it coming to that. We don't see that they're taking up stones, but they're making very similar claims that you've taken us out, and your suggestion may be right, that we came to the gates of the land with milk and honey. But still, here we are in the desert and you brought us out to kill us, right? That's your basic assumption, or at least that's, I think, what they're suggesting.
I wonder if there's some other aspect, because Dathan and Abiram were from the tribe of Reuben. And so obviously they're not even of a Levitical tribe. And it could also be bringing division in the ranks as well. Those things are definitely wicked. So and in doing so, and in coming up against Moses, separating themselves from the people, separating themselves from the rest of the Levites, bringing division, I think, is a pretty serious issue that may come into play here as well.
Right. Well, God says that's one of the things that he hates is those who sow discord. It's an abomination in his sight, right? So that's Proverbs chapter 6. There's 6 things that the Lord hates. He hates 7, right? The first one's a proud look. Then hands that shed blood, right? Pardon?
I said they have that one.
Yes, they do, right? And they're sowing discord. Sowing discord. And I thought it was really interesting as we were going through it, that Moses says, by this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. Who does that remind you of, Gary?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, Jesus said the same thing, right? Like, I didn't come to teach my own stuff,
right?
And I think that is one of the biggest mischaracterizations about him. In fact, I see that Ed Doss is on the chat, and he and I are friends, and we talk about this. And there's a guy that he's been talking with, and there's a sense that Jesus has his own commandments, right? And somehow they're different than the commandments that God revealed to Abraham, and then what he revealed at Sinai. Right? They are the same exact commandments. And Moses is now having to say the same thing. This isn't my idea, guys. I'm not doing this for me, right? This isn't my will. I'm simply speaking what God has said. And that's what Jesus was saying. I'm not here to preach my own thing. I'm here to preach what he said. And I think that is one of the biggest misunderstandings and mischaracterizations of God. I mean, it's straight up Marcionism, though people will deny that till they're blue in the face. But it's still Marcionism. It's straight up Marcionism. When you say that the God of the Old Testament had these other laws for those Jews, but then Jesus came with his own set. That is Marcionism. That's textbook Marcionism. And so it's interesting that the first Redeemer of Israel is saying words that would then be echoed by the second Redeemer of Israel, right? They wanted to kill Moses. They wanted to kill Jesus, right? So again, we start seeing these really incredible parallels between them. But of course, Jesus, thank God, he never failed. He never gave up on the people. He had compassion even on the cross, right? That's what's so amazing. But though Moses did not reach that same level of perfection, of course, as Jesus, but still, I mean, God's like, just let me wipe him out. And look what he does. He intercedes for the people. God, no. I mean, what if one man sins, should everybody die?
Mm-hmm.
So he puts himself in that place as an intercessor for the people. And that's, of course, what Jesus did as well.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's continue on here. I believe we are in verse 45. Let me put my screen. All right. Sorry, everybody. Sometimes getting to the next window is a little harder than you might expect. All right. Here we go. All right. So then, I think I'm in the wrong verse. I have to toggle between screens here. All right. Okay, here we are. So tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away. The censers of these men who sinned against their own souls, wow, against their own souls, let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, because they presented them before the Lord. Therefore they are holy, and they shall be a sign to the children of Israel. So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, and those who were burned up, that's important to understand there, they burned up, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider who was not a descendant of Aaron should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. On the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You've killed the people of the Lord." Now it happened when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron, that they turned toward the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a censer and put fire in it from the altar, put incense on it, and take it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord, the plague has begun." Then Aaron took it as Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly, and already the plague had begun among the people. So he put in the incense and made atonement for the people, and he stood between the dead and the living, so the plague was stopped. Now those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the Korah incident. So Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, for the plague had stopped. Wow.
So
That's pretty crazy stuff right there, huh?
Yeah, so let me make sure I'm clear, because as I was reading through this several times, it looks like there's three different types of judgment that happen. First of all, there's the earthquake, the earth that swallows up the tents and the families of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Then there's these 250 guys with censers that essentially get fried, burned up right there on the spot. And then there is the judgment of the plague, where Aaron then has to intercede with his censer and the fire to stand between the plague and the rest of the camp of Israel. So am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I think so. I think you got it.
So
And yeah,
there's some aspect of the censer of the incense that is of another realm.
hmm
It's when brought properly, Nadab and Abihu, obviously the sons of Aaron, they
hmm
paid the price. I guess when you get in the presence of God, there this is a very touchy business. I know my wife Jeannie
yeah,
uh, pointed out to me a couple of months ago how in relation to one of your teachings about the nuclear radiation that it comes forth from the throne of God,
hmm
from
hmm
the ark, and
right.
that smoke is actually one of the things that is used in modern day smoke detectors actually
Mm,
work based on a little bit of radiation that they have in them. And when the smoke rises, it interrupts that radiation stream and
mm,
makes the alarm go off.
mm.
So and that's just an earthly example. How much more so is it in the heavenly realm, or in the sanctuary that is here, God's presence here on earth? Um,
That's
it's
deep. I
there,
know
there,
that's
there is
really
something going
interesting.
on there that
Right.
beyond my
Yeah.
understanding. It's over my pay grade. You know,
Well, and I think it underscores that what we see in Scripture is not it's not legend, it's not myth, it's not fantasy, but it's all grounded in science. We may not understand all of that science, but what you're saying about the smoke detector, I mean, that's pretty amazing.
right?
And I just want people to understand that I'm not saying that God is has nuclear radiation, right? But there is this fiery. That's the best example I can think of, right? Is that you got to really watch yourself when you go into the presence of a nuclear reactor. You have to have tremendous respect for that because it's no respecter of persons, right? It doesn't show favorites, doesn't play favorites, doesn't care who you are. If you go in there unprepared, you will get smoked, right? You will come out fried. It doesn't matter who you are, right? And that's why God said, nobody can see my face. No man can see my face and live. God wasn't like, hey, nobody gets to see my face because I'm too good looking. He wasn't saying that. He wasn't like this really proud mafia boss, or the right hand man to the mafia boss. Nobody gets to see the boss and live, right? It wasn't like that. God's like, you guys can't see me, you can't touch us. It's just like, no, you can't, right? We're incompatible. That's the point. We're incompatible. And we had a very similar incident back in Numbers chapter 11. It says, now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, for the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed them in the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place Taverah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them. All right, so you you have this thing where you've got people getting smoked, getting burned. Who's the question is, where is this fire coming from? Where's the fire coming from? This is the same fire that when Solomon was dedicating the temple, where did the fire come from? It came down from heaven and it went in there and it lit all the fires, so that the fire on the altar was not earthly fire. And that's the point, is that when Nadav and Abihu took in strange fire, the word there is zara. It just means it's foreign, so it's not native, right? It's not foreign. It's not fire that ought to be in the temple. What kind of fire is it? It's the fire that's just regular garden variety, right? It's garden variety fire. It's the stuff that we use every day. But the fire that deserves and the only kind of fire that can be in the temple is God's fire. And if you are not careful with that fire, if you mishandle that fire, you will probably pay the price. You will probably pay with your life, because that is what it is to be in God's presence, is you're now in this incredible fire. And that's, I've talked about this many times, Gary, is that our God is a consuming fire. And I think too often we're quite a glib with those words. Well, that's just kind of interesting language. That is that's just allegory or metaphor, or that's poetic kind of stuff. I'm like, no, it's not poetic. This is real. Let's go over to Ezekiel chapter 1. This is one of my favorite passages in the whole Bible. It says, "And above the firmament over the heads was the likeness of a throne in appearance like a sapphire stone, and the likeness of the throne is the likeness with the appearance of a man," that's Adam, "high above it. Also from the appearance of his waist and upward, I saw as it were the color of amber with the appearance of fire all around within it. And from the appearance of his waist and downward, I saw as it were the appearance of fire with brightness all around it." Right? So this is God. This is God. He's got fire from the waist up and fire from the waist down. Same thing in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, "I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was of fiery flame, its wheels of burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him." And then what's interesting is in verse 11, I've got this highlighted. This is the Antichrist finally getting thrown into the lake of fire. He says, "I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame." Where does that flame come from? The flame is God's flame. It's coming from God, right? It comes from God. And we also have in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 33, that Tophet, which is Gehenna, is kindled by God's fire, right? So, and I did a whole teaching on that. If people want to check it out, the fate of those who take the mark of the beast. That was in Revelation chapter 14, part C, I think it was. That was a while ago. But anyway, I amassed all these scriptures that are talking about this topic of what it means to be in God's presence. Even we are told, and again, I take this quite literally, we're told concerning our destiny as believers. Our destiny as believers, Paul tells us, this should be some shock therapy to all of us. "Now, if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become clear, for the day will declare it, because it will be revealed by fire. And the fire will test each one's work of what sort it is. If anyone's work which he's built on it endures, he will receive a reward. But if anyone's work is burned, he'll suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire." I mean, and this is where I think, it's fine to kind of look for the sod interpretation, the remez, and we like to get into all these kind of higher senses of understanding it. And I'm fine with that. But sometimes we just need to stick with the pashat, right?
Mhm.
With the simple. Right here, what's right on the page. I don't need to go looking between the lines and kind of mystifying this. And that's okay. I'm fine with doing those things. But sometimes just stick with the simple interpretation. In fact, I remember about 10 years ago now, I was in Israel, and I asked a rabbi, because I was writing my book, Corrupting the Image, and I have a whole chapter in there about what God looks like. And I'm like, "Hey, God has a form." He's like, "No, no, 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 no." I'm like, "Well, why not? I mean, it says it right here in Ezekiel." "Oh, no, no, don't take that literally." I'm like, "It's right here in Daniel." "Oh, no." And I said, "But it's right here in Numbers chapter 12. "Oh, no." And my thinking, oh, and then I'm like, what about Exodus chapter 24, where they saw God, they saw under his feet, like, oh no, those aren't real feet. I'm like, wait a second. I get it that there are metaphors in the Bible. I get that. But at what point, I mean, how much evidence do we need to finally say, I think this is literal? I mean, if we have passage after passage after passage, all from different vantage points, showing us, telling us this aspect of God, why shouldn't we take it seriously? I mean, I think it's the simplest explanation. The simplest explanation is that God's fire broke out among the people because they were in such proximity to God, right? They were so close to God that it became dangerous. That's why at Mount Sinai, they saw God up there on the mountain, and all the mountain was just on fire, right? It was just like burning. And they're like, Moses, why don't you go up? We'd rather not. Why don't you go up, right? So here they're forgetting about what Moses did. It's almost Moses like, wait, you're volunteering me? You want me to go up there? It's kind of like, you see in these horror movies, who's going to go to the door and see who's there? Well, I'm not gonna. Here, why don't you do it? We push the loser up front. Why do I have to do it? So Moses goes up on top of the mountain. I mean, he doesn't know either, right? He's never actually been in God's presence. This is pretty crazy stuff. And when he says, show me your glory. And then God passes by him. And he says, Yehovah, Yehovah, right? And he declares his name. What's the first thing that Moses does? Bam, right? He just face plants, right? He's just like, oh, wow, you're awesome. You are awesome, right? Because you cannot help it but genuflect when you are in God's presence. You can't help but just put your face to the dirt because you're overwhelmed. Even the prophets, when they were looking at God through a vision, were overwhelmed. Ezekiel fainted because of God's presence. He fainted. I mean, it's crazy. Daniel was in the presence of angels, not God, but angels, and he fainted. So to be in God's presence is an incredible thing. It is. I can't think of words because I've never experienced it. All I can say is from what I see in Scripture, and it looks like a terrifying, awful, right, full of awe experience that you want to be very careful. You want to be very circumspect before you go in God's presence. So here you have a whole people that have this incredible privilege, right? They've got the creator of the universe hanging out with them. Here I am, guys. What do you want to do today? We're just going to complain, Lord. We're just going to complain. Right? So complaining and God's fire don't mix well, right? And this is where they suffered the consequence. So
Absolutely. So the evidence is clear. We can't go and ask any of Korah's men what it was like because they suffered the consequences. And as we continue into the text, it just baffles me how many times God shows and displays his power, and then ultimately the matter is settled on a stick. And I don't know if you want to continue reading.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, that's almost comical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me get back to our text here. Yeah, that is kind of funny. All right, so I think we came to the end of 16, so I'm going to skip to 17 now. All right, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and get from them a rod from each father's house, all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. For there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony where I meet with them. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel, which they make against you. Wow. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave him a rod apiece for each leader, according to their father's houses, 12 rods. and the rod of Aaron was among the rods. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. Now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. God's like, I'm going to show you, right? This is not going to be just a little fluke here. Then Moses brought out all the rods from before the Lord to all the children of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony to be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put away their complaints away from me, lest they die. Thus did Moses, just as the Lord had commanded him, so he did. So the children of Israel spoke to Moses, saying, surely we die. We perish, we all perish. Whoever even comes near the tabernacle of the Lord must die. Shall we all utterly die? All right. Wow. Well, God wanted to make it really clear. It's not just a blossom, but it's like a whole harvest, right? You got almonds coming out of this thing. He's like, is that clear enough, right? I mean, that's God right there. He just he's doing the whole growth process just ultra quick. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Who could bring life from the dead, right? No, it is absolutely amazing. However, why they were convinced by Aaron's staff and not the fire that comes before them, not to be by Sinai, not by the splitting of the sea, not by being taken out of Egypt, not by being fed manna, not by coming, seeing the fruit of the land. So many things. It baffles me. But sometimes, that's what it takes, I suppose.
It takes a personalized message, right? Isn't that essentially the message of Paul? He's saying in Romans chapter 1 that God has made his presence clear in all of creation, and yet men's hearts became darkened because they thought themselves wise, but they were really fools.
Yeah.
And so they substituted the creation for the creator. Right? They would rather worship the creation instead of the creator.
Yeah.
So it is a weird thing. But before we start casting stones, are we really that different? Are we better? I mean, don't we do kind of the same things? I mean,
absolutely, over and over again. The more things change, the more things stay the same. And it's you would think that we would learn, and we would, but sadly we don't necessarily learn our history lessons, or we don't think it applies to us, or we think that's for them and not for us, or we think the Lord wouldn't look on me that way, or that's not my heart. I mean, we've got 101 excuses and justifications for the way we behave and the things that we do. When it really does, if we could learn the lesson of walking in humility, serving others, loving our neighbors, like you said, doing the simple things. Once we get the simple things down, then we can go for the more complex, meatier matters. But we stumble over and over again on the simple things.
Well said. Yeah. Well, let's get into 18. All right. Then the Lord said to Moses, you and your sons and your father's house with you shall bear the iniquity related to the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you shall bear the iniquity associated with your priesthood. This is pretty cool stuff here. All right. Also, you also bring with you your brethren of the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that you may be joined with you. They may be joined with you and serve you while you and your sons are with you before the tabernacle of witness. They shall attend to your needs and all the needs of the tabernacle. But they shall not come near the articles of the sanctuary and the altar, lest they die, they and you also. They also they shall be joined with you and attend to the needs of the tabernacle of meeting for all the work of the tabernacle. but an outsider must not come near you. And you shall attend to the duties of the sanctuary and the duties of the altar, that there may be no more wrath on the children of Israel. Behold, I myself have taken your brethren, the Levites, from among the children of Israel. They are a gift to you, given by the Lord to do the work of the tabernacle of the meeting. Therefore, you and your sons with you shall attend to your priesthood for everything at the altar and behind the veil, and you shall serve. I give you your priesthood to you as a gift for service. But the outsider who comes near shall be put to death. And the Lord spoke to Aaron, here I myself have also given you charge of my heave offerings, all the holy gifts of the children of Israel. I have given them as a portion to you and your sons as an ordinance forever. This shall be yours of the most holy things reserved from the fire. Every offering of theirs, every grain offering, and every sin offering, and every trespass offering, which they render to me, shall be most holy for you and your sons. In a most holy place you shall eat it. Every male shall eat it. It shall be holy to you. This also is yours, the heave offering of their gift, with all the wave offerings of the children of Israel. I have given them to you and your sons and daughters with you, as in an ordinance forever and ever. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. All the best of the oil, all the best of the new wine and the grain, their first fruits, which they offer to the Lord, I have given them to you. Whatever first ripe fruits is in their land, which they bring to the Lord, shall be yours. Everyone who is clean in your house may eat it. Every devoted thing in Israel shall be yours. Everything that first opens the womb of all flesh, which they bring to the Lord, whether man or beast, shall be yours. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man you shall redeem, and the firstborn of unclean animals you shall redeem. And those redeemed of the devoted things you shall redeem when 1 month old, according to your valuation, for 5 shekels of silver, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. But the firstborn of a cow, the firstborn of a sheep, or the firstborn of a goat, you shall not redeem. They are holy. You shall sprinkle their blood on the altar and burn their fat as an offering made by fire for a sweet aroma to the Lord. And their flesh shall be yours, just as the wave breast and the right thigh are yours. All the heave offerings of the holy things which the children of Israel offer to the Lord, I have given to you and your sons and daughters with you as an ordinance forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the Lord, with you and your descendants with you. Let's stop there for now. There's a lot in there. So let's take a stab at that, Gary.
So,
what are your impressions?
What my impressions are is that, so we've just said this rebellion from the house of Levi, and so this is kind of setting the record straight. It's like, look at, you guys have a role, you have a function, you have a place within the body of the children of Israel. It's a really important role that you have. It's an essential. You're an essential worker, and there's a lot of benefits that come from that. There's some drawbacks. You won't have any inheritance, your Lord's inheritance, but you will, as you receive the tithes and the gifts, as you minister before the Lord, He will provide for you, and the people will provide for you. And so, in a sense, He's saying there's no need for you to try to become priests. You have a role and a function. And I think that's something that we need to understand in terms of being comfortable within our own skin. And we're all gifted differently. We're all blessed in different ways. And I always think it's great to be able to operate. If you can operate out of your strength and your passion, then you're doing the best work that you can do for God. And clearly God has given these roles, the roles of the Israelites, to go into the land, to till the land, to make it bear forth fruit, and to raise crops and herds and so on and so forth, and then and fruit and wine, and grain, and to bless the Levites who are going to minister before the temple and the priests who are going to minister before God. So everybody has their role and their function, and we shouldn't long for others. We should always long to do the best that we can to strive for excellence
Yep.
within what it is that we are given to do.
Mhm.
But when we look at it, and I think Doug, you probably hit the nail on the head when you were talking about coveting. When we begin to covet and desire things that are not within our not destined for us, and then there's a problem there, and it gets to be a problem because all of a sudden now we're seeking to do something that is not for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear you, and I was just thinking about that. I think there's a sense of a competitive nature that is inherent and probably in most of us. Instead of just being comfortable in my own skin, instead of just being happy being me, I'm trying to be somebody else, right? And I think we see this in a lot of our marketing. We see this in our movies. We see this in so many things. It's not enough to be you. You've got to be that football star. You've got to be the basketball star. You've got to be the prima donna. You have to be the uh, the rock star. You've got to be, fill in the blank. And that's where I think we get in trouble. Christians are not immune to this. Pastors are not immune to this, right? Okay, I'm a pastor, but I wish I were that pastor. I wish I had the mega church, right? I wish I had a million people watching every week, right? And and so these are some of the things that we have to say, okay, I need to stop competing. And a lot of it's most up here or in the heart where the competition is actually happening. But it's that sense of I'm not good enough. And there's kind of that fine line, right? Because we do want to strive, we want to keep learning, we want to improve ourselves, as you just said, be the best you possible. But what happens is we get really confused. In order for me to be the best me, I've got to be better than you,
Right.
right? And that's not what God is saying. In order, if you're a Levite, for me to be the best Levite means that I need to have the job of Aaron. And God's like, no. So yeah, I really do think it was a coveting issue that Korah wasn't satisfied with the job he had. He felt that to really be somebody, he had to be the priest, right? So he wasn't the priest in order to intercede. He wasn't interested in bearing the iniquity of people. Are you kidding? He just wanted the job, right? He just wanted the status symbol. He wanted the position, and I don't know.
I'm
It's
kind
hard to
of
explain
like
it.
you've lived in other countries, and is this an American thing, or is it overemphasized, or in America the sense of competitiveness of keeping up with the Joneses, beating the Joneses, um, uh, always striving for next, best, better, that type of thing? Is that an American thing, or do you see that through other cultures around the world?
Well, I mean, when you really think of the amount of countries I've been to, it's uh, out of the 180 or something countries I've been to a handful. Actually, gotten to know a handful. Um, I think it exists in every
Well,
in every country. But what I would suggest is that you are going to perceive less of that at the lower socioeconomic levels. So as we become more affluent, then that sense is, well, wait a second, I should have more, right? And I constantly remind myself and my family that we're rich, right? Now, by American standards, we are lower middle class. Okay, I think that's probably where we are. Okay, um, so we're not making bank every week, right? Um, I'm happy. I'm not complaining. All I'm saying is that I want to remind us that we live in a beautiful house compared to most people in the world.
mhm.
We are rich. We have so much. But I feel it in my own heart. Well, wait a second. So and so has maybe not a bigger house, but they have a nicer house, right? They've got better furniture. They've got a better car. They have a better health insurance plan than I do. And so there's that sense to start comparing myself, whatever it may be, with somebody, and I have to fight against that. And again, I don't know if that's purely American. I think what I would suggest is that it's probably universal, but in America, because we have a lot, that we tend to compare ourselves a bit more. And I think TV has really helped to foster
media.
Yeah, because we can see into the lives of the rich and famous, right? We can see how filthy rich some people are. Some people's riches are filthy, some are not. But even filthy rich, right? We have this expression that's just part of our lingo. That if you were super rich, then anyway, that's a rabbit trail. But yeah, we do covet a lot, and that is what I think Korah was truly guilty of. I wanted to go back in our text here. It really struck me. It just struck me that as we were talking about this, he says that you shall bear the iniquity. That's a pretty big responsibility.
Yeah.
But think about this. In Isaiah 53, it says that he carried our sorrows. Nasa, it's the same word there. All right. So there's that. He was wounded for our transgressions, etc. Let me get to the next. The Lord has laid on him. He was oppressed. Open not his mouth. All right. And it's verse. Here we go. And he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgression. Right. So here you have nasa. Right. Nasa is to carry. It's that same sense of carrying, to lift, bear, take, carry. And of course, Jesus becomes the ultimate example of that when he carries the cross for our sins. But we see it sort of this marker, this identifier of what the priest's job is. It's to bear the iniquity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be talking, in case people don't know, I'm going to be talking with Rabbi Eisen this coming Sunday at 12 p.m. At Mountain Standard Time this coming Sunday. And he wants to talk about Isaiah 53. And I'm like, really? I'm not pushing this. He's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I think it should be a wonderful conversation. But I think as we look at that, whoever that suffering servant is, I have my position. But as we discuss this, whoever that Messiah or that servant is, he's carrying the iniquity, which is the very thing that God said that the priest had to do. That's what Aaron was charged to do. So this can't just be. It can't be anybody. Whoever the servant is, he has to be a priest, right? He has to be a priest. So that means if he were Jewish, he would have to be an Aaronic priest, right? He has to be one of the Kohanim of the tribe of Levi. Or there's one more option, right? And that's of the order of Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So it's amazing. It's just beautiful when you put all these things together. And that's one of the things that convinces me beyond the shadow of a doubt that Scripture is true. When I start looking through the prophets, I'm like, how did these guys say these things? Right? It's beyond comprehension. It's beyond credibility or credulity that some guy who's writing hundreds of years after all this stuff happened just kind of wrote all these prophetic all these prophecies, and they just happen to fit together like hand in glove. It doesn't work that way. It would take a genius beyond geniuses to put all these things together where there's no contradictions in the text, and they're all working together to show us, which to me is like, this is the stamp of God when you have these things, and they just keep showing up here and there, and they're all over in Scripture. And I wish I could remember them all at once. I can't, but they just keep coming to me, and I'm like, wow, that is so cool. And yeah.
I think this whole passage is just a great example of again, people striving to be something that they're not destined to be, maybe even for this time. I go back to the Mount Sinai, right? The marriage covenant. The covenant that was given to them in Exodus 19:6 says, I have chosen you to be a segula, a special treasure, and you will be a kingdom of priests. I wonder if this marriage were perfect, that the role of a priest would be different, if they were to bear iniquity, or was it just a minister? I wonder what it would have been like had not the golden calf happened, and the complaining about the meat, and the complaining about this, and the complaining about that, but I look at what this is in Exodus 19:6, and then I reflect on that, and I see what Peter says, and what it says a couple times in the book of Revelation, where it says. Revelation 5:10, you have made them to be a kingdom of priests to our God, and they will reign. Where else does it say? For 2 Peter 2:9, you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of God's own possession, as segula, a special treasure. So there's Revelation 26. Blessed and holy is the one who is part of the first resurrection. Over these, the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Messiah, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. And so it harkens back to this idea, I think, of what was intended at Sinai the first time. And when we look at the promise of the new covenant, the remarriage, and the promise that brings, which takes us to Isaiah chapter 66, the last chapter of Isaiah. When I love what I was looking earlier at that, and oh gosh, where does it say that? He says that he will be coming back in a flaming
15.
chariot. Yeah.
15. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's a flame. He's coming back as a flaming fire. But down in verse 20, it says, verse 19, I will put signs among them, and from them I will send survivors to all the nations, Tarshish, Libya, Lydia, Tubal, and Greece, to the far-off coastlands who have not heard of my fame or seen my glory, and they will proclaim my glory among the nations. They will bring all of your kindred from all the nations. So who is bringing this? The nations are bringing all of Israel back, the house of Judah, the house of Israel, to my holy mountain as an offering to the Lord, on horses and chariots, on mules and on camels, just as the Israelis bring a grain offering in a clean vessel. Then I will select some of them for myself as priests and Levites. So who is the them he's talking about? People of the nations. So this is a fulfillment of exactly what Peter is talking about, exactly of what the book of Revelation is talking about. And of course, verse 22. So as the new heavens and the new earth that I am about to make will endure before me, so your descendants and your name endure. And of course, from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come to worship before me, says the Lord. And they will look upon the dead. And so this revelation language is all over this last chapter of Isaiah, but
Wow.
it talks about us kind of regaining, I think, what God had originally intended with this marriage covenant that
Wow.
got messed up at the beginning.
Yeah. Amen, man. That's good stuff. Yeah. And I'm going to be talking about that when I get into Revelation 20, 21, and 22.
Is that next year? Is it?
Yeah, at this rate. I know. That'd be like Revelation 19 part Z. There's so much in there,
There's
man.
so much, and you don't want to cut it short.
It's kind of like the entire Bible. I mean, Revelation is that capstone chapter. Like, this is the final chapter, and it has allusions throughout the entire Bible. I mean, everything is alluded to, right? Adam and Eve, creation, the priesthood, because what was broken is going to be fixed. So then you have to go back and say, okay, what actually got broken, right? So then you have Adam and Eve, right? So death enters into our bodies, death enters into the planet, enters into the relationship between God and Israel, and then Jesus dies and he resolves those things in a legal sense, and then we start to see we start to see the process reverse until we come up to this climactic matter where Satan's like, no, I'm not going to let go of this world. I don't care what you do. And Jesus shows up, and they have this really cool battle and all that stuff. And then we have sort of the post climax, and they lived happily ever after kind of stuff, and we get a pretty decent view of that. Part of this, what I'm going to talk about, that is a little bit controversial, is I really believe that the new heavens and earth come at the beginning of the millennium, not at the end of the 1,000 years. And the passage that you just read from Isaiah 66 is one of the most powerful proofs that we have. He said that, as the new heavens and earth shall remain before me, all flesh will come before me every Sabbath, every new moon, right? They're going to go out and look upon the corpses of the men who transgressed against me, as you just read about the Levites, right? So it's in that millennial context, if you will, but it's a new heavens and an earth. Right. So we're going to take a deep dive into that as well, and we won't rush. So by the time I finish Revelation, I don't know, it'll be we'll have to have a party or something. We made it through. Actually, I'm trying to stall so that Jesus will show up before we finish the book.
It's all about the timing. That's right. You get the timing just right, it'll work out great.
Oh man. Well, speaking of timing, we're out of time. This has been wonderful. What a wonderful passage.
Yeah.
Great things to learn. And I just encourage everybody to stay in the Word. Keep reading the Word. I mean, don't read it because you have to. Read it because you get to. You have the privilege of reading God's Word, and read it for comprehension. Read it for, just kind of, these things would be examples to you. And let's see, okay, how can I apply this thing of Korah to my life? What did he do that really blew it? In my opinion, it was coveting. But maybe God will show you something different, and let that be a way that you could apply it to your life, because that's where the joy comes in, when you start to really apply it, because then your life starts changing, and all of those fears and worries that you carry around every day that you wish you didn't have, but you kind of like them because they're familiar and you know them, right? But you really do want to get rid of it, and so by studying the Word, applying it, and then living it, living the promises, they will do you no good if you don't put them into practice.
It will transform you. The Word never disappoints.
Yep.
It always bears fruit. And if you need that transformation in your life, if you are in a situation where you are just stuck in a rut, where you're doing the same thing day in, day out, you never seem to be getting anywhere, and you have a hunger and a thirst for something that you know is missing, go to the Word, and it will not disappoint. Seek the Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and He will plant a seed in your heart that will raise up and grow and transform you from the inside out, and you will be a new creation. It is amazing.
I'm into that. So I hope everyone can join us on Shabbat. We are back together. We're meeting in our facility again in Lakewood. So check out the website. If you can't make it in person, join us online on this YouTube channel at 10:30. God bless you guys.